Hello friends, welcome back to the Poplar Report. I just came out of the Dutch Resistance Museum here in Amsterdam. I'm going to be talking about some of the thoughts that I had from this. If you have the chance here in Amsterdam, definitely come check it out. But I'm going to give you some of the thoughts from the overview of the Dutch Resistance that I think a lot of people really need to take to heart and to think about. The biggest thing that I really took away from the whole thing is how the Dutch resistance in World War II really kind of started layering up on top of it. There were very few people from the outset that were all about it and all in on it. There was very few that from the very outset immediately jumped into armed resistance. Most folks that were involved in it got involved in a layered approach. They took small steps. They first were just really provoked by the whole attacks on the Jews, the registration of the Jews. That was when they started to take them away. That's really when we saw the resistance start organizing at a grassroots level. People were taking small steps, and out of necessity, they started organizing with other small groups. And so that really kind of led from the grassroots level up. It wasn't some big grandiose plan. Now, there were two main networks that really took hold here. One was the communists, and the other one was the Christians. And the Christians were a much larger network, and they were the ones who really did a lot of the stuff, but the communists ran a little different. From the very get-go, they were all about organizing strikes. They were organizing even attacks on collaborators. So there was that happening from the very outset, but we would say that most of the opposition, most of the resistance organized relatively slowly and in a layered approach. All right, so one of the other takeaways that I really got from the whole thing was the importance of Radio Orange, which was a radio broadcast from the UK of the Dutch government in exile, as well as just the newspapers, more like newsletters that got printed here in the Netherlands in opposition to the Nazi regime. So they definitely felt the need to get information passed around, and the stories that were not being covered by the occupation, because they were very limited in what they were allowed to know what was going on out there. So good news that was happening around the world against Germany, and then also the bad news for the Germans, right? All this was being hidden from the people here in the Netherlands. But like you've probably heard in your history books about how Germany really kind of went into the persecution of the Jewish minorities and the Jewish people in the whole area. They did it in layers. First, they did it with registration and propaganda, and then they moved on into further and further persecution. So the same kind of thing happened here too. When the Germans came into the area, they were very much trying to get the people of the Netherlands, the Dutch, to kind of see themselves as part of Germany. And so they tried to do it with very soft hands, but the problem was that as they came down on particularly the Jewish people, more and more people found the need to hide the Jews, moving them out of the cities whenever possible. But then food became a major issue because of the rationing. And so because of the ration cards and not having enough food, they needed to band together in order to kind of solve these problems. And that's when you saw the individuals who were hiding people turn into small groups who were hiding people, to turn into groups that were organizing with other groups. And then even they found a need to start arming themselves. So the people that were hiding people were part of the LO network. And then they started to have the LKP. The LKP was where they were really focusing in on basically doing small-scale raids on offices that had coupons, like ration coupons, and going after basically getting the food that they would need and the resources that they need in order to hide these people. So the Dutch resistance was very much all focused around resources and then intelligence and propaganda slash information warfare. That was where a lot of it really was. There were small numbers of people that were actually doing strikes on collaborators, but those are mostly from the communist side of things. And let's just say it this way, even towards the end of the war, the Christians and the communists did not trust each other. They did not trust each other at all. Particularly the Christians had very low confidence in the communists, but in war, there are strange bedfellows, right? Just as the Americans got into bed with the Russians in order to defeat Germany, so the people here in the Netherlands had to get along with the communists in order to help defeat Germany there as well. So it started with hiding the Jews. Then it moved over to hiding drafted Dutch men because they were forced to work in Germany, and a lot of them saw it as their civic duty to disappear. So they disappeared, and then it was not only just hiding them, but also trying to get them out of occupied territories to Switzerland, get them to Spain, get them across the ocean, across the English Channel over to the UK. And a lot of young males and men saw it their duty to get over to basically Britain to help with the war effort. And so a lot of them, hundreds, over 100,000, tried to get across the English Channel over to Britain. And that was also a major thing that happened. ID cards. Apparently there was very little resistance to the introduction to ID cards. And of course, one of the big things that happened with the ID cards was the J stamped on ID cards of anyone who was Jewish. And so they were forced to register. They had to pay a small, like a $1 tax or something like that. And it was there to see that it was a slap on the wrist kind of thing, and most people went along with it. But later, people died in order to get that J off of their identity cards. So it's that insidious thing that things that seem small, especially registrations, seem small at first, can become very, very large issues down the road. And so don't apologize for quibbling over small minutia, with the understanding that those things could become very, very big down the road. There was a group of people that worked very hard, took a whole year to launch an attack on the registry. So basically you were given an ID card, but then back at basically a central office, there was like this giant paper registry of everyone. So they could basically, if they didn't believe that your registration card was accurate or your papers were accurate, they could then cross-reference that with the National Registry. So basically these guys at the registry, combined with other people, had to spend a year planning and organizing the raid, where they raided the registry and then blew it up, basically. They burned and blew up most of the records so that it would be easier for the people with false documents to get away with it. But they weren't able to get all of the documents. So that was something that kind of happened too. The ID cards were brought in little by little. People were made to sign documents saying that they did not have any Jewish lineage in order to get scholarships, in order to get government positions. And just people were slowly moved into a position where they had too much to lose in order to resist. And the museum does a fantastic job really helping you think through a lot of these issues, a lot of these challenging scenarios of what would you do. So you have the LO, who is trying to just basically protect people and hide people and keep them away from danger. And then that naturally formed where they needed to have an armed wing where they could seize resources to provide for those people. As the Allies came into the Netherlands, basically they came in halfway and then they got stopped cold, and this caused a problem. So the Dutch government in exile in London basically ordered the Dutch people to rise up and have a massive railway strike. And so they did have this massive railway strike where they stopped all the trains across the Netherlands. And they did that, but the Germans fought back by basically banning the movement of food. And it became the hunger winter. And many Dutch people starved to death because of this. Before the Germans before they surrendered and before they got driven out, there was a massive famine that happened in the entire area. There were many children who were so malnourished inside the cities that they were evacuated out to farming areas where there was actually food. There just wasn't enough food inside the cities for the people, and so there was much suffering because of that. So those are my biggest takeaways for those of you interested in learning more about Dutch resistance and kind of what they went through. The Netherlands wanted to stay neutral like Switzerland, and the Germans did a surprise attack and jumped in through the country before they realized what was happening and took the country over. The Queen was able to escape and form her exile government, but the country was captured almost intact and with very little fighting. There was some resistance, and they did end up actually bombing one of the cities. But other than that, it was very, very fast. They collapsed, and then the things that happen very, very quickly may take a long, long time to undo. And it's when you're in the midst of those events that trigger changes of government, changes of leadership, I mean, you can hardly say how far the ripples go. And so these are some thoughts that I have. One of the real interesting bits that I saw there too was that the Christians in the Netherlands were very concerned about were they allowed to lie, and were they allowed to resist the German occupation? Should they resist? And so they actually sought out one of the women in the Netherlands actually went to Switzerland and sought out the theologian Barth and actually asked him his thoughts on the thing, and he came to the conclusion, and actually she wrote it up into a paper, a pamphlet that was passed around amongst Christians inside the Netherlands, that Christians had the obligation to resist, and that they had the obligation to lie to the German occupation in order to undermine the government. And so that's something that I know a lot of Americans and a lot of Christians have that thought process of, like, well, we should always tell the truth, and we should never aim to deceive, and we should never do anything violent or anything like that. And I think that theologians over the years have, that there are moments, there are exceptions, there are extreme moments where the good of telling the truth is outweighed by the tremendous evil of what will be done with that information. And I think that that's something that needs to be discussed. And I think that it should not be something taken lightly. I don't think that should be like some kind of carte blanche. Well, okay, it's okay to lie. It's okay to not tell the truth. No, that's not the point at all. What the point is that in extreme situations, under the authority of a state, under the authority of a government, a legitimate force, you you use, so like if you join up with the military, you're under the authority of that state, and as the Bible says that the state is given the sword, the authority to fight warfare and to punish wrongdoers. And when you're acting as an agent of the state and you're commissioned by them to do lawful use of force, that is legitimate, and that's where a lot of Protestant Christians have landed over the years. But in addition to that, there is that. Is there ever a time and place for deception and to lie? And that's really the hard question there too. And I know that if you're familiar with World War II and some of these conversations of Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor in Germany, who ended up being part of the resistance in Germany against the government there, those are tough questions, and he came to the conclusion that it was the obligation and also the duty for Christians to resist in that way too. So he actually ended up becoming a party member and everything in order to subvert and to undermine from the inside. So these are difficult questions and difficult times, and most of us have never lived in such difficult times. I've brushed up against them in some of the places that I've worked overseas, doing work for the kingdom there, where it was illegal to do some of those things. And so I've brushed up against it. I've become familiar with a lot of the conversations dealing with pastors and such in closed countries. So I know this is a hard conversation, and some of you guys are just not Christians at all, and you don't or wouldn't hold yourself to that. And I know some of you guys very much are. And I think all of these questions of morality and that really are difficult questions that should be thought about, and at least room put into your life so that you can at least have these conversations when needed. All right. So if you get a chance here in Amsterdam to go to the Dutch Resistance Museum, please do that. Fantastic work they've done there. A lot of the difficult situations are presented to people to consider them for themselves. And then also just think through, I know a lot of people are spouting their mouths off about stuff going on inside the United States, but one, as we keep saying, resources are so very important in any kind of opposition or conflict. And two, it's the network, the communications, and not getting ahead of yourselves, not jumping all in, but rather taking the next logical step and interacting with others who are boldly and courageously taking the next logical step to do what is necessary, but not doing more than what you believe is necessary at the time or what even other people are ready for. Because if you do, you become isolated. What you need to do is you need to take care of people. You should always be focused on taking care of people, your people, and helping other people take care of their people. That is the preeminent. And act locally, act at a grassroots level, and keep things on the down low. All right, friends, this is not Radio Orange. This is not a broadcast from the government in exile, but some of those things we could maybe think about more. All right, friends, thanks so much for joining with us. We'll be putting up some more information as we can, but I will see you guys later. If you want to check out another video, there's one right on the screen. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report from Amsterdam out.